This is Andy B. Hello, the Get Your Home Show, 4 till 7 every weekday here on Pure 24/7 Radio. Now, Monday and Wednesdays, as we've said, we have various lovely people to come and talk to me who I can introduce you to. Some you will know, some you may not, but either way, great guests. And I have another guest for you for today. So let me introduce my Wednesday afternoon post 5 o'clock guest. Hello to you, Claire.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Now, you're part of the Proclaim Trust. We've chatted with quite a few folk now, which is, I love this. I really do. We've had this with a few different organisations where you just get this sort of flurry of different people from the same organisation. It's really interesting because it's all different stories, different reasons. For people who are listening really early on, just give us a really simple overview. What's the Proclaim Trust all about?
So, Proclaim Trust is a charity that is set up to facilitate the work of Barry Woodward. So, Barry is an ex-addict who came to faith, had a massive encounter with God, completely changed his life around, and now he works in an evangelistic way, goes into prisons, goes around the UK, sort of telling his story. And he's also a qualified minister. And he evangelizes to people, and we just do what we best can to support him. Really, that's what we do.
So, what's your part within the Proclaim Trust, and what is it? How do you support him through what you do?
You might have heard him mention when he was on. If anyone heard him, he runs a course called Your Story Reframed, which is it's a structure he's developed over the years. He's an excellent public speaker. He has a real gift for speaking, and also a way of. He's developed that into a way that can be taught to help people be really effective in their communication. So as part of that, we run a version of that over a year, each year, for anyone who is interested, really. If you've got a testimony to share, a story to tell, you can come do the course. I now facilitate that course. So I'm the admin, the one doing all the emails and the Zooms and things like that behind the scenes.
Which without stuff doesn't tend to usually happen. People don't randomly appear before you at the right time unless you ask them.
Yeah.
I want to come back into sort of work and life and stuff for you, but how did you find yourself working for Barry? What was your journey into working with him and alongside him in the Proclaim Trust?
So me and Barry are part of the same church, go to the Bridge Church in Bolton. And I had seen Barry speak there, and at the end of, because he does 2 talks at the Bridge each year, near enough. And I was in the service when he was doing one of his talks, and I loved the way he shared his story. I'd got his book and already read his book. And he put a note out about his next Your Story Reframed course, which was at the time being run by somebody, like another admin person, not me. So I decided to sign up. I felt really called to sign up to. I'd never shared my story. I'd talked a bit about my testimony, but I'd never done it publicly, and something I'd always felt like I wanted to do, but had massive anxiety at the time, and I could not have spoken in front of anyone about, unless it was one-to-one. I just couldn't have done it. But I felt so called to do it that I was on my knees at the front of the church, being prayed for, and the response and things like that. And I went to speak to, I actually spoke to Barry's wife, Tina, afterwards, because Barry was a bit too scary for me at the time. But I enrolled on the course, and I did it in 2024, it must have been. So I did it over that year, and that course took me from not being able to speak in front of anyone to be able to, I've delivered my testimony at the Bridge now. I think that's between 100, 200 people. I've stood on the stage and helped a bit at Fixed, which is 600 people. So to be able to go from where it took me through, it was a real journey that God helped me unlock, like through Barry's ministry there, and be able to tell my story effectively as well.
Standing up on a stage, it can be quite daunting. I'm quite used to it now. I don't know. I'm not sure you ever get fully used to it. You never quite know, are they going to be receptive to me? I mean, this is loads of different, possible venues you could be in. And well, will they be receptive, and will they want to hear what I have to say? And is it too hot? They're going to fall asleep. I've had that.
Oh, no.
Quite no. I was in an interview one time, and one of the guys did fall asleep, and it was nothing to do with me. We were in the hottest room in the church. And these guys, it was the end of the day, and I thought, this is really, I was so hot when I walked in, I was standing up and falling quite drowsy, and this guy did actually fall asleep. They had to wake him up. Great. I didn't get the job there. I'm not sure that was all my fault. But this is the thing. You never quite know when you communicate, whether it's on a stage or in a room, how is it going to be received? And I guess something like the course that you're now helping facilitate, that's there because we've all got a story, right? We all can
Yeah.
say what's gone on in our lives, but somehow knowing how to do that, how do we frame the parts of our life that are important or relevant or that people can pick up, and there's some things that they're really exciting, but they're not necessarily going to help tell the story, and you need to know, well, which bits do we do and don't do, and if you don't have some help, or you're not just gifted and wonderfully natural, which I definitely wasn't, you need somebody to kind of bring you along and coach you to bring the very best of you out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that definitely was the case for me because not only having the stage fright, the anxiety, the fear element, I also it's a running joke now that my testimony when I started was about 17 pages long and it was about half an hour. And we had to cut that down to 10 minutes. So like Barry jokes like we had a lot of Zooms. He had to coach me a lot because it's one of the things when you've had so much go on in your life, and like you say, you don't quite know which bits are, it's all important to you. It's all part of your story, but it's then using that mentoring, that structure to be able to pick out the key highlights that will really speak and impact other people because you can ramble a bit. If you're just telling your life story, you can go off anywhere on a tangent and people get lost. So the way that we do it is it goes in a linear way and we have a certain structure. I don't want to give too much away because that's Barry's trademark, but it really changes. You see people go from the very first Zooms and the beginning of the training to then at the end being so effective and being so blown away by their testimony in that 10 minutes. And they then get to go on and like you've had Ange on, you've had John on, who have both been come through the course last year. And Angie's a trainer now, and they go on to share their testimonies, and they're getting responses, and that's what we want. We want people to be impacted for their lives to be changed because we're just trying to show that God is real, God's changed our lives, and that actually He could do it for you too. He wants to do it for you too. So that's what we're about, really.
That's very, very good selling of that thing, I think.
Yes.
I've done lots of public speaking. I work on the radio. Tangents, my presenters all laugh now. Tangents are kind of what I do. I go down tangents and come back, and it makes it quite interesting. I can't say I was trained to do that. It's just me. It's how I function. And it seems to work well. I think you can score me at the end if you want to with this interview. But I don't really do any kind of classic approach because this is who I am and how I've learned to be. I'm kind of rambling along, which is what I do. It's one of those things that it can be quite beneficial. And I've seen some real help for people because sometimes my rambling, it just gives them enough, I don't know, confidence to think, well, if he can ramble and I can do that as well. And that's fine because it's kind of what I've come through. But I've been more nervous in a room of 50 than I have in front of 900 people, 800 people. Though I'm confident. Stick a keyboard in front of me in a church. I don't care how many people there are. I'm very comfortable. But there are other scenarios where I'm just not. I went to the Church conference. I've never shaken and been so scared in my life. And I don't know why. It wasn't that big a room for me personally. I'm talking about a subject I know, and yet somehow certain scenarios, regardless of how much preparation you do, you're going to have that anxiety regardless if you can rehearse what you're going to say. I hadn't even worked it out. I never do. So, I mean, you're talking about some of the anxiety. How did you find yourself sort of overcoming some of the anxiety in order that you can then give your testimony?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely God. Let's God's the main one because within as part of that process, because it's a Christian course and we've got God right in the center of it, there was a certain amount of healing that I went through sort of by things I'd dealt with or thought I'd dealt with. But when you're digging into things and you're going over your past, I describe it as you're taking everything out and putting it on the table and you're having a good look at everything again. And you may have thought that you didn't need to look at those things or certain things ever again. So you're quite happy to have them back in a drawer somewhere and all of a sudden they're there. And that takes a lot of processing. So that was a healing in itself. And I felt like God's grace was with me in that journey. I felt really held by the mentors, by Barry and Alison and Alistair and John, some of the other mentors at the time who were on the team. And I see that happening with the same people coming through now. Like it can be really confronting. We always say to people, don't go to a place where there's lots of hurt. So if you can't talk about anything without breaking down, then we don't need to be covering that yet. You're not ready, and you might never be ready to talk about those things. But I think getting over that, so processing a lot of stuff, really feeling called to do it, and then having the structure is like a comfort blanket. It's like a scaffold that holds you up because I know that if I'm going to deliver that testimony, it's going to be the same every time. So there's a certain amount of, you've done it a certain amount of times, you've practiced it, and you become more comfortable with it. You go in with that holding you up, and with God's grace holding you up, and that anointing, that calling to go and speak, holding you up. If you're just chatting one to one, it's totally different in a way. You can go off and you've got that time, you've got that luxury. But if you're in a room where people are only there for half an hour or whatever amount of time it is, and you might be one of a number of speakers, I can do my testimony in 5 minutes now as well. Like, it gives you that framework to be able to cut things right down, and you can get the impact there, but you can do it in a way where you're in and then you're out, and you've said what you needed to say. You felt confident because you know those points, and then you can move on. So I think it's more that I still do get nervous. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. I was nervous doing this, but it's not to the point where it's stopping me, and I think that's the difference. You can have the fear and have the nerves, but you can still carry on with it. When it's stopping you from doing something, which it certainly was for me, that's when you know it's a problem.
I remember being told nerves are good
Mm,
to a point. A
mm,
little bit of nervousness means you want to concentrate, you want to focus and do your best. Eventually, that nerves effectively becomes anxiety because now it's so great you can't perform, and you're twisting over your words and you're not quite sure what you're saying, and your hands are doing weird things you didn't even know could do. So nerves can be good to a point.
mm.
Because it can help us to perform. And if we're doing a talk of some sort, there is always, even in churches, there's still an element of performance. Because if you want somebody to understand what it is you're trying to say, and you just read it as a monologue, they're not going to listen. So actually performing is actually a part of delivering the most simple testimony, because people need to be able to engage with the very heart of what it is you're trying to put across.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I love the Your Stories Reframed structure, because it's very much got the performance element in it, in that Barry's big on being intentional about the way you use the stage. And, he's got lots of different tips and tricks for there, but we're really trying to get people to be able to see the time and place where we are. So for you and as the audience to be able to come on that journey with us, we try and set the scene, we tell you where we are, we give you some key details so that you can visualize it. So you feel part of the story, and we talk about you and we throw yous in there. So it's not just about you sit there and listen to me. It's more like come see what I've been through, come with me. Let's do it together, and see how much my life has changed as well, because that's the difference. It's not just about, oh, that's great for you. We want everyone to think, well, I could have that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That walking alongside people is such an important part. One of the most healing things we can do for so many people in this world today is just listen. We don't even have to speak. Just giving somebody the honor of actually being able to communicate their story to us without us saying a word. For some folk, that's just such an important thing. That's not patronizing and condescending. It's saying a lot of people don't get to talk to anybody. So
Mm.
the greatest honors that we can give to someone is saying, "Tell me a story," and then shut up and listen, which is the important part, because maybe they've never had the chance to talk about that. And I've
Yeah.
met so many people who work in so many different areas, whether it's Christian ministry or whatever. Just letting somebody talk, sometimes it's the beginning of a healing journey, because nobody wants to hear what they have to say.
Mm. Oh, yeah, and I think if you've been through a lot, you've been through trauma, usually, yeah, you've got that victim's voice. That's so important that that is heard. And one of the things we work on is we don't want to traumatize the audience, so we have to be careful what we are sharing. But there is a way of being able to allude to things or cover certain things so that people will know what you're talking about, but without all the graphic detail of and feeling really traumatized, and using the light and shade. Like a lot of us, when you've been through stuff, you have a great sense of humor because that's the way you cope with things. So then you're naturally able to sort of add that light and shade in. Not that we're ever making light of anything or fun of anything, but it's just to give that light and help it easier to take. Really, it's like the sugary medicine, isn't it? It's easier to swallow sometimes, but Yeah, it's being heard and being seen and heard when you've, especially when you've been a victim or you've been through trauma. And also to be a survivor and to be redeemed, I think to be seen, heard is so important. Like to feel that you can stand up and say, "My God has done this for me." It's huge because you just want to be able to pay that back, really. You want to be able to shout from the rooftops.
Really do. Let's go back in time a little bit because you're talking about faith in church and all that sort of stuff. Where did you start with faith? Was it, what was your upbringing? Was faith part of that? Was it a distant part? How did faith become something obviously quite personal for you?
Yeah, so I have not grown up in a Christian family whatsoever. I was born in Whitworth, a little tiny village. Well, it's a town now, because it got a swimming pool and a library or something, like one of those. I remember it becoming a town and it was a big thing, but it's a village on the edge of the Pennines near Rochdale. And my family, it's a broken home. Dad walked out when I was 2 months old. And there was a lot of alcohol. There was a lot of, so I grew up with a lot of trauma and difficulty. But there was a lot of Church of England sort of schools. I'd gone to a Church of England school. And one of the biggest things for me was, ironically, was always reading at the front of church if we'd go in for school and things. So I had little bits of teaching there. And I was the strange child that on a Sunday I'd hear the bells sort of tolling across the moors because I'd lived and I would walk and go to church and people would be looking at me and thinking like, well, who are you with? And it's like, no one, I'm just I'm
Mm.
just here by myself. But I didn't really get it. I didn't fully understand everything. I knew I believed in something and that something looked like a God, but I didn't really understand about Jesus, or I just, I thought it was weird or I didn't really get it. And then I had a personal encounter when I was 16. I had gotten to the point where I was so damaged, so broken, so many things had gone wrong that I was ready to end my own life. And I was adamant that I was going to throw myself off this bridge. And just as I was about to leave the house to go there, I heard what I describe as to me an audible voice, but inside my head, in the back of my mind, just saying, "You don't need to do this, Claire." And I was just like, "Is that you, God?" And it was like, "I don't want you to do this, Claire." So that was a massive moment that changed my life. Um, a huge personal encounter. I knew that God was real. I knew that He wanted me to be alive. And it set me off on a faith journey where not instant, but little things I was that kept me in the world. And I went and got treatment and all sorts of things. And I was on the bus going to college not long after, and going 464 going to Rochdale, and I looked to my right and there's Thrumhall Church, and it was a Methodist church, and I was like, oh, well, I wonder what Methodist means. But I just felt like, because I had no idea, I just felt like I needed to go there. So I ended up going on the Sunday, and I bumped into an old primary school teacher of mine. And he'd grown his hair really long, and I was just like, wow, Mr. Smith's here, and his hair's really long. And it's crazy, isn't it? But it was so different from the Church of England churches I've been to that were quite formal. It was more relaxed and people were friendly, and they had like a bit of a youth um, team that went out sort of part way, and we did Bible study. And so I started meeting friends there, just more, I would say, more wholesome teenagers, maybe you describe it, from what I had been hanging around with. And then I got invited to a fellowship group in Bacup, and that was a lovely Methodist couple, Ralph Ward and his wife Adele, and they were in charge of that circuit, like the Bacup and Rottenstone and all that. And that's where I learned about Jesus. And I used to argue with them, and they were just, I'd be like, well, this is blasphemy. What are you talking about? How can he be the son of God? And I'm blessed. And they were so patient. Like they just would answer all my questions and give me time and really be caring and loving. And I describe it like, the happiest teenagers you've ever met, a group full of like 20 to 30 kids, like as if they were on steroids because they're all hugging you and they're all like sat on the floor on cushions and being all happy and eating biscuits and drinking tea. It's nothing like I'd ever experienced before in my life. And we'd be singing, by candlelight and worshiping and Bible studying. And then we went to Easter People. And I heard, I can't remember who the speaker was. It was Easter People in Bournemouth. And something just clicked. They were talking about Jesus and it all just fell into place for me. And I just knew that Jesus was who they were saying he was, that he was the Son of God and he had come to die for our sins and it was for me too. And I accepted into my life and I just got hit with this overwhelming wave of love like I'd never ever felt that before. And that changed my life. Like it wasn't easy after that, but there was big changes and there was ups and downs, but that was the real turning point. So I was 17 in Easter People, Bournemouth, and changed my life. So thank you, Methodism.
Look, I love how patient that couple was with you because
Yeah.
from wherever we've come from, whether it's church is a normal part of our life or it's a very foreign concept, there's always a journey. This is the bit I love about these interviews when it comes up, because you don't just suddenly like a light switch go from not a Christian to a Christian. That it does not work that way. There's always a journey, and clearly yours is a journey that took you to a very dark place, took you through some quite empty, a bit of anger, and you're trying to wrestle with this life stuff, which I would assume, therefore, without making a huge leap, is because of pain in your life, and it all starts to bubble out. And as you come closer towards this thing called God, and is he really a thing or a person, and how does that, all that stuff starts to get churned up. So I'm so grateful you met some people who were so patient with you as you're trying to thrash out some of this stuff you just don't understand. Question I have to ask, how long do you think it took you from the first kind of, this is interesting, this Christian stuff, through to now, this is my life moving forwards? How long did that kind of journey of becoming a Christian, which I say very loosely, how long did that take for you? Oh, you still
Oh,
there?
sorry, I just lost the end of the question there because of my signal, I think.
No, that's fine. How long did it take you to become a Christian? Basically, I suppose is the really broad question.
It keeps breaking up for me. I'm so sorry, but I think you're asking me how long did it take me to get from that time to where I'm at now? Is that what we're talking about? Okay, thank you. So yeah, I mean, I was 17 then, I'm 44 now. I still feel like I'm kind of trying to work it all out, to be honest. I would say, I mean, that time after that time I ended up going on mission to Romania and then I got to university. These were all massive miracles in my life but I was dealing with ongoing things, and I would say that having never been raised a Christian and then not necessarily having a solid church base and a clear walk, I was all over the place to an extent. So once I went to uni, I was living back with non-Christian people, and it was very difficult for me to separate the two sides of myself. I guess that refining process took a long time, and I think the main word for me is patience. Like that, God has got infinite patience with me. I feel like, because I definitely didn't get it straight away. Bits of it I would get. I was on fire for Jesus. I was believed in him, but I was definitely not living the whole Christian life yet. And I would say that up until into my 20s, maybe. And then I've had a massive period of ill health where I just got diagnosed with chronic illness. So I went to the point where I was bedbound. So I was living sort of on my own and trapped sort of in my own house and in my own, and I lost a lot of the things I'd worked up to, like a steady paying job and a relationship and all these things. Like there was lots of things going on for me. But during that time, I had nothing really except for my faith, and my prayer life really sort of got a lot deeper. And so I would say from that point, that's when things really changed for me, because I had nothing else to lean on. And I hadn't really, when I look back on my life, I hadn't had anything else to lean on except for God. But that's when I truly knew it. That's when I was really reaching in and depending, because there was nothing except that for a long time, really. And yeah, I hope that answers a little bit of your question.
No, it does, because the one thing that I found I, not every interview that I do like this, there's a faith journey within it. Sometimes there is quite a lot, but when there is, it's never the light switch moment. It's always like 3 years, 5 years. There's always this period of time where someone's showing that interest and it's becoming, it's of interest. That's fascinating stuff. And then there's sort of an experience, probably somewhere along the line that triggers some thoughts or some emotions, and then that kind of translates into wanting to do something different with your life. You're not quite sure what that means, and how does God fit into that? And at some point, you have to go from, is God a thing or is he a person? Where is he real or is he just this nice ideal? And then you get through that phase, and eventually you become a Christian. But the journeys that I've read about, the people who've spoken to over the last few years, especially, it's like 3 years seems to be pretty normal from first moment of, I mean, okay, we might have, faith as a child and go to Sunday school, that's fine. But from the journey of the actual journey of something's not right in my life, I'm not okay with this, to, that's what it is, to Christianity. It seems to be about 3 years. I don't know where that fits with what you went through. I'm always curious.
Yeah, I think very similar. I think probably a bit longer for me, maybe like more like the 5 years. But yeah, definitely recognize that 3 year. Because I think, especially if you've not been raised in a faith, there's a lot to learn, because it's not just the meeting with God and encountering God and making that decision. It's then learning to live a whole different way of life. And you might be heavily mired still in the current way of life. And it takes a long time, I think, especially when you're a bit slow on the uptake, like I obviously am, to realize that these things are not necessarily good for you, and that there is a different way. And especially from my point of view, learning what a healthy relationship was, I'd never known that. I'd never been shown that. I'd never been taught that until I started to meet the Methodist crew. But I would only see snapshots of that. I had to, it's almost like God was really patient to help me find and discover and learn that in my own way, and I really wish I didn't have to go down that way and I had chosen different options, because there was a lot of extra heartache that I can see I brought on myself. But I think you just grow up with a certain way of thinking, and I was definitely raised in a worldly way of thinking, and it took a long time to untangle and unpick these different layers to myself and my life and the things I've been taught and shown. And so I will forgive myself for that, really, because I just think, it's just, it is what it is. And I'm just grateful for where I am now.
I see. I would say 3 to 5 years sounds pretty normal. I
Mm.
think there's some misconceptions about when you become a Christian, it's all great, off you go. It's not like that.
No.
Yes, it's the start of an amazing journey, but you have to let go of all the pain, and God will deal with some stuff. It's slightly aside, but I feel like I'm having to start to walk again, because I've had a sciatic nerve which has got triggered badly. I've then been limping for about 3 months. Now it's starting to fade. I feel like I'm having to learn to walk again. That's just walking as a grown adult from a few months of a painful nerve. When you're talking about your story, you're talking about, probably a couple of decades nearly of life and lived experience. It doesn't, if I can forget how to walk kind of by limping for 3 months, how much more are we talking about when you've got someone's entire life style needing to change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's it. And I think that's what's given me a real heart for other people who are coming from that same sort of background or lifestyle, and you just want to encourage people that it is okay and they will get there, and it's not easy, but God is faithful. And yeah, like you say, 3 months, it can be life changing. You can't, even the simplest of thing, like your body, something in your body goes wrong or something in your life goes wrong. It's just, it can really upset. And I love the fact that in the Bible it talks about the valleys, and you have all the different biblical characters who, the people of history that went through really difficult times. Like one of my favorite books is the Book of Job, because you just, nothing much worse could have happened to Job. He went through everything. So yeah, and that's probably not a normal opinion for everybody, but it really encourages me that you can go through, you can lose everything, you can go through the worst of the worst, but God is still faithful, and He will restore you. So I cling on to that, really.
Honestly, Job is one of my favorite books in the Bible too. I can
Yay.
live with Job. I can understand a lot of what he went through.
Mm.
I'm thinking, what did I do? What did I do? And then you have to deal with all the problems that come out of that. So yeah, no, Job. I definitely get the book of Job. If you're thinking, where's that? Going to your Bibles, Old Testament, about halfway through, probably near enough.
Yeah.
Book of Job. That's where Job's comforters come from, of course, the people that come alongside us. Oh, now, well, what have you done wrong? The unhelpful souls. So you've gone through all of that in your life. Obviously, there's some traumatic stuff back there as well.
Mm.
You talked about the anxiety of standing on a stage that you then were overcoming, in part with doing the story that the story frame that Barry's got a project for, and it helps you to gain who you are. One of the things that I remember, it was a Johnny English film that was made, and I was watching the extras, and there's this fascinating part which is really relevant for everything you just said, because the character Boff that we see in the was it MasterCard adverts or something, he was there, and they shot the film with the character in the film. And it came to the end of the film, they cut him out. And the director said the problem was it wasn't adding to the story. It was hilariously funny. It was superb. It was brilliant. But it did not add to the story. And by cutting out all that brilliant stuff, no one would have noticed in as much as it didn't add to the story. And I just think that's always stuck with me. That's a long time ago now. And we're the same with the radio or the magazines. Is this actually adding to the story? Because in a sense, it doesn't always matter how great or wonderful or fantastic it is. Is it helping to tell the story? And some of the best stuff sometimes can detract from the human person in the middle of it all. Some of the stuff you've been through, there's a you in the middle, and some of those amazing things, some of those phenomenal things, if you told them, that's the bit that people focus on and not the person in the middle.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why it's really important we get to know people when they're coming onto the course. Like one part of the mentoring other people is you get to know them and you do hear all of their story, and you do through that. I think, like you mentioned before, there's something about having that being witnessed and being honored and seeing all of the story and hearing it all out, and then helping them pick out the key parts as well, because it is hard for people. But how do you decide, unless you are the editorial person, how do you decide which bits to highlight and which bits to cut out? Because it's all linked, it's all part of your journey. And yeah, but then for the outside person looking in, there's certain points that get you from A to B that maybe don't, for them, add to the story, but they do. And we always say to people, well, keep it for your book. You could write a book one day, and then keep it going. You can put it in your book, or if you do a longer talk, put it in that. But there's so much that maybe we don't share about ourselves because we think it's not important. But one thing I do love is that I know that God knows it's all important, and God honors it all. God knows it all, and he remembers it all. So even the parts that I may never share with anyone, he knows.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, very true. Let's just paint the scene of the first time you go to get on the stage. You've got everything in your head. You know what it is you're supposed to be saying. It's a bit of an obvious question, but I think it needs to be asked really. But how did it feel going onto that stage for that first time and thinking, how's this going to go? What goes through your mind for people who are thinking, can I ever do that? How did it feel as you were going up to speak for the first time?
I mean, the very first time we do it as part of the course. So you deliver as part of the course, so you get that practice, and that is really scary. I was terrified, to be honest. You kind of practice yourself at home, but nothing prepares you for being in a room where there's lots of people looking at you and waiting on you to give your piece and do well. And then you've got your mentors there, so that is scary. But I would say that because everybody's doing it there together and everybody's in the same boat when you're on the course, and the mentors are there to help you, not there to tear you down. It's not it's not really about, oh, well, you didn't do that right, or that. It's not like that. It's just an encouraging time. So you have that experience which builds you up. And then compared to the first time of then going out to share in front of complete strangers who's never, I went to speak with Barry, so I was doing mine bit first. That was extra pressure, I think, because I was really honored that I would get to do that. But if I messed it up, then Barry's got to then, he's there to witness it, and he's got to come on after me. I think I felt nervous, but I felt prepared, and I felt happy actually to be getting the opportunity, and that this is finally stepping into something I'd felt called to for a long time. So there was a mixture of that. So I think if you are out there and you're thinking, well, I could never do that, but actually you really want to do it, you can do it, because it's not actually about us. It's not our strength, it's God's strength. And if you feel called to do it, and this is something that you really want to do, I believe it's placed in your heart for a reason. And I believe that God honors that, and he will support you and give you everything that you need to equip you. And I think there's something that just overcomes you in the Holy Spirit that allows you to do that as well. So it's, yeah, just get out of your own way. I always say it to myself, just get out of your own way, Claire. Like, just don't get in your own way and you'll be fine.
I love that. I said that in a different way for my own self because I know that I'm my own worst enemy. I always have been. Lack of confidence in certain situations, which might surprise people. I do. I get really unconfident in certain scenarios. But do you know what? You learn over time to find ways not to mask it, because that's not the point, but about being honest and vulnerable, but also getting on with the job at hand. So you going up for your first talk, you delivered it. How did you feel as you came off and thought, huh, that was all right? What was the feelings from, because it's quite a head slap, isn't it? From, is this going to be okay, to, huh, I just did it.
Yeah, I felt, I mean, I felt really good. I felt empowered. I think it's definitely helped my confidence to grow. I feel like I've stepped into something that I've been being prepared for, and that, so all of these things, it's like all the jigsaw pieces coming together. And it's not that they're all there yet, but there's many more there than what there was before. So I'm starting to see more of the picture, and it just feels like a more comfortable place to be. And there's always that one for me. I mean, it's different for everybody. For me, there's always that one or two people who really connect with my story. And then I have a really good conversation with them after, and I'm able to pray with them and encourage them. And that's what it's about for me. It's hearing from other people, and the fact that when you share your story, it will then speak to specific people that God brings forward at that time who've needed to hear what you're going to say. And they've been sat struggling with that for maybe all of their life. And if you didn't take that leap and trust and stand up and go for it, and I encourage you to do this, Andy, that person might not hear, like, it will be through, because God works through all different people, but your story is unique to you, and it can unlock something in somebody else. And I feel like that's part of the partnering with God that we get to do. And so when that is really amazing to be able to see, and it's part of the ministry then, so that it's something else. I don't know how else to describe that, but it's miraculous in a way, and it's amazing. So it's all worth it. You just forget about yourself and you're just concentrating on what is happening, what God's doing in the room.
One of my favorite thoughts about how we kind of interact with God is nothing's wasted. If it's bad, it's bad. God isn't going to make something bad and suddenly make it good. That's not how it works. But he can redeem those bad parts, the struggles, the hurts, the traumas, and he can somehow do something good. It's still evil, but God somehow does something good with it. And I don't know how that works. I never will, probably. But I love that nothing's wasted. So the pain that you've been through, or me, or anybody else listening, it's not wasted. When you come through that, and that's what we've seen that with a few of the guys from who've chatted with Ange or John or even Barry. The story of our life that can help somebody else. I've been through some traumas as a small child. I have to be really careful what I talk about with that one, because I'm okay with it. But like, sometimes you've got to be really cautious about who you put that with, because some people can't cope with some of the stuff that happened. So I was doing a talk at a men's group, and I was a small child, and I thought, we're not going full ball with this one, because there's someone younger. So you have to adapt it to where you go. You have to look around at your audience and think, well, that's really important, but it's not. That's less important than that kid being protected, because he doesn't need to know about some of this stuff. Maybe he does. I'm not the one that wants to tell them. And that's part of life. I've even found that when I've shared some of my stories with some ministers who just couldn't cope with it. Oh, that's not possible. That can't happen. And well, thanks for dismissing me, but yes, it actually did. And I found someone who actually listened, because we can't necessarily understand or comprehend the cruelty of mankind to people. It doesn't make sense. I was watching a documentary recently about Hitler, and so you have to remember about Hitler, he was a man. He wasn't some weird, strange alien creature. He was a human being and a man that did some really cruel things. And we need to understand, not that we can all do that. I mean, yes, that's a whole other conversation, but he was a man, and a man did some really terrible things. but he wasn't that so much further away from any of us and who we are because he was still a human being. And we need to
Mm.
remember who we are as people in order to interact with other people. And I think that the thing about the stories, which is why I'm loving working with Barry, and we're telling some of the stories through the radio and the magazine, is because stories matter. Because, like you said, you get those one or two chats. And I know, because I've had the same, I know how precious that is to you that someone's like, oh, they've spoken my language.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't, I mean, I think back to where I was, if I'd have been able to encounter someone who was speaking my language in that way, it might have unlocked things in a totally different. I mean, I got that in a different way, but to have someone who's talking about what you've been through and you relate so much, you go from feeling totally alone and like you don't belong in this world to hang on a minute, this is actually survivable. This is redeemable. I'm redeemable. There is hope. Hope is the key thing. And actually, my surname, which wasn't my birth surname, used to be Hope because of my stepdad. It was attached to me. And one of the things I always think is God's got a great sense of humor. And I actually believe that he attached that name to me until I was ready to have I could carry that hope for myself because as soon as I had that hope within me and I didn't need that name went. It's the funniest thing. But yeah, really, so I see God doing things like that and being able to stand up as a beacon for people is huge. Even if it's one to one, if it's in your local community, if it's in your workplace, if it's it doesn't have to be on a stage in front of lots of different people because the power of seven, like people will be impacted by you and then they will share a little bit of what they remember from your story with the next person. And all of a sudden, it gets to the seventh person along and that connects the whole world, doesn't it? It's that, the seven times removed sort of theory. And that's all we need, really. We sometimes think that we have to do something really grand, but I think the bravest thing to do is just to be open, honest, and vulnerable and to take those moments when they come.
I totally agree. I think we're always looking for that massive spectacle that we can be a part of that's going to change the world. And we always say the same thing here. We're not trying to fix the world. We're really not because it's impossible. We can't do that. But we can, on the other hand, help one person feel better, or we can write an article that lifts them up, or we can do a radio show that keeps them company. And we were reflecting on our second birthday as a radio station last year. And one of the things that Andy Godfrey, who's one of our movie reviews, he said, the thing is what radio does and what we're doing, he said, you're keeping people company, which doesn't sound very exciting, doesn't it? Oh, is that all we're doing? All this effort and music and yeah, but how much more priceless is that person? And if keeping people company, that's all we're achieving, well, that's not a bad thing to be achieving. And I think it's being sensible about what we can achieve, not talking ourselves down or limiting us, but actually, in a sense, opening up what we can achieve rather than thinking, let's fix the world. Let's just help one person.
Yeah.
In traffic, we've all seen traffic. Someone lets someone in a traffic jam. What's likely to happen? They'll let the next person in. Someone doesn't let somebody in. What's going to happen if that person ever gets in? This is my space. And that's what happens in life. And if we actually start letting people in, all of a sudden let somebody else in, and I can't change the world, but I can change the life of one person. And they can change the life of somebody, and all of a sudden that one small act is multiplying, which is the beauty of what I'm really enjoying with Barry's work, his story. There's the work that you're doing with the story refrained, and it's transforming one life at a time, and that one person whose life is transformed changes another life, and all of a sudden one action isn't one action, now it's being multiplied. And that's the bit I love, which is why it's being an honor to speak to people like you, and we've got more coming as well. People might be thinking, okay, can I do this course? Who's it for? Am I allowed? Who is this course for? Who's allowed to be part of this?
So anyone, I mean, I think it's mainly for if you've had, a Christian journey and you can talk about that before your life, before change, and you can talk about after change. So it's mainly a testimony and guys, why can I not speak that word today? Evangelism tool, today. So that's what we're looking for, but anybody can join up. I think it's really like a good price. It's £50 for the year, which is nothing really. That doesn't cover all our costs. Proclaim Trust actually subsidise that because it's not about making money, it's about equipping people. Um, so yeah, if you are interested, you can email me, which is claire@proclaimtrust.org.uk, or you can go to the website, which is proclaimtrust.org.uk, and there is a section on there about your story reframed, and you can just click that button and email in. So yeah, it's Claire, Clair, without an E, just to be annoying. Um, Make sure you spell that right. But yeah, you can follow Barry on socials. He's got Barry Woodward as his pages on Facebook. You can find him easily there, or search Proclaim Trust and it'll come up in Google. I don't want to overstep, but I'm wondering if I can tell you a little bit about Beam before I go as well, because I also do run this other charity called Beam. And I would be really sad if I didn't get to mention about that, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm also CEO of a charity called Beam, which is peer-to-peer support for mothers, birth mothers who've had their children placed into care, adopted, or living elsewhere. So we help look after these women when women have had their children removed, which can be for any number of reasons. Usually a high percentage of domestic violence cases. And there can be mental health, there can be learning difficulties, there can be substance misuse, there can be all sorts of things, it can be homelessness, it can be all sorts of things that we don't realise. Very complex needs and cases at times. But rightly so, the children are focused on and they're looked after as they should be. But then there's no support for the mothers. They're just left to deal with that loss and that trauma. It's a huge trauma for both parties to be separated, mother and child. And we just focus on working with mothers at the moment. And so we're there to support them and give them a safe space so that they can learn to live with that, to be able to deal with anything they need to deal with and to be able to carry on with their life, whatever that may look like. Some of our mums have been able to be reunited with their children, which is amazing, but others will never have that option. And, you know, they won't always have any other contact with their children other than maybe some letterbox contact, and that is a lifelong sentence that they have to deal with, and it's very heavy. So it's one of the things that we're a Christian charity, we're a registered charity. We feel very strongly called that by Isaiah 61, that God is there to mend the brokenhearted, bind up the brokenhearted. And if anyone is out there listening that might be influenced by any of that and need any help, we're at www.beam.support, and you can reach out to us for help and support, and we're free to access. So
that Beam, BEAM.
BEAM, yeah, like a beam of light.
So Beam
into a dark space.
If that's something that you would want to access. Claire, thank you. It's been a real. I'd love talking to you and hearing some of your story, because I think stories matter. And I think, as I say frequently, our story is really powerful. Learning to tell it can make it even. It's not unpowerful. It's always powerful. But if we can enhance it and make it even more powerful, then all the better. And it can transform lives. And we just don't know who's going to need our story, who's going to need our experience. You know, I've been through this and I've been through that. Oh, no one will care. No one knows. Actually, they really probably do. Actually, with millions of people. But that's not the point. It's about helping one person, because people matter. Yeah. Claire, thank you. We're going to go to some more music and carry on from 6 o'clock with more of the usual stuff. But Claire, from the Proclaim Trust and also Beam.Sport, thank you kindly for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the time to come on your amazing radio show. Really appreciate it.